You're good to go.
Good evening, everybody, and I hope you had a great summer. Welcome to the September 7th, 2023 Parks and Recreation Commission regular video meeting. I'm Paul Burstein, the Parks and Recreation Vice Chair. Chair Struck is unavailable tonight. Tonight's Parks and Recreation Commission meeting is using video conferencing technology provided by Zoom. The Zoom video of this meeting is being recorded and will broadcast live via Zoom. It will also be uploaded to the city's YouTube channel later this evening. City staff and guests are participating in tonight's meeting remotely. Other public audience members are listening to the meeting by telephone and via the internet. Additionally, the city has opened up the community center to provide public space for viewing and participating in the meeting. Welcome to all, and thank you for joining us tonight. Commissioners, please turn on your microphones, and will the city staff please call the roll?
Thank you, Vice Chair Burstein. Vice Chair Burstein.
I'm here.
Commissioner McCarthy.
Here.
Commissioner Cohen.
Here.
Commissioner Markson.
Here.
Commissioner Hay.
Here.
Commissioner Westberg. Chair Struck. Thank you, Vice Chair Burstein.
City staff, is there anyone who has signed up for appearances that wishes to address the commission?
Yes, there is, Vice Chair.
Thank you, individuals that wish to speak live during the appearances portion of our meeting. You may do so by telephone, via Zoom, or in person at the Mercer Island Community and Event Center. Provided, however, they are registered their desire to speak with the city administrative staff by 4 p.m. today. Our city administrative staff will call on you by name or by telephone number when it is your turn to speak. This is the opportunity for anyone to speak to the Parks and Recreation Commission. All remarks will be addressed to the commission as a whole, not to individual commission members or staff members. If any person makes personal, impertinent, slanderous remarks or becomes boisterous, threatening, or personally abusive while addressing the commission, I may request that person to be removed from the meeting. When it is your turn to address the commission, be sure to speak audibly, state your name for the record. Your comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Staff will provide you with a 10-second notice when your time is about to expire. And once expired, I will thank you for your comments and move to the next speaker if there is one. City staff, please admit the first speaker.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I am moving over Maria Stepanoff Summerfield.
Vice Chair Vice Chair Burstein, I'm going to run into that room real quick and make sure we're all good to go.
Okay, let's just hold in place and see if we can bring Marie into the meeting. There she is.
Hi, sorry, I thought the meeting was in person, so I came into the community center. Can I begin?
Please do.
So we got our P-patch in 2016. At the time I had my children were 8, 10, and 12. And I had really wanted a place because our house is very shaded and I love to garden. And I wanted a place to teach them how to garden and grow things. That's always an important part of my life. And we got our P-patch, and my kids pretty much have grown up from 2016 to 2003 right now, working in the P-patch. They've learned to plant and grow things. My son, who has autism, really found a home at the P-patch. And one of the things I love about it is it's a very multi-generational place. it was a place where my Pea Patch neighbor, Bill, who is, I think in his 80s probably, and a retired school principal, would talk to my son and interact with him and teach him how to do things, where my kids got to kind of know a different generation of people on the island that they would have never been exposed to, which is a really big deal. I think now they're all teenagers, and it's still the Pea Patch is one of the few places on the island where children and teenagers will kind of get to know and interact with different generations of people on the island in a very mellow way. I want to thank everybody who makes the Pea Patch possible. It's been a really important part of our family lives. All 5 of us work there. My husband, who can't be here today, even though he's a super busy person, he works in Microsoft AI. When he, on his way home from work, which is pretty stressful and busy most days, he'll stop at the Pea Patch. I brought show and tell. This was like 1 day's worth of picking, and he grows things. He's gotten into growing different varieties of peppers. And so our Pea Patch is a huge part of our lives, and it's a great place to build community on the island. Many people on the island, even if we have properties on the island, there's a lot of shade on the island, and the Pea Patch is in a great area for growing things. It's really hard to grow if you're surrounded by trees. And so I just want to thank everybody that makes it possible. What I'd like to see as we go forward as a community, and one of the things that
10 seconds.
one of the things we used to have is it really only 10 seconds? I'd like to see less micromanaging of gardeners, and I'd like, most of us love our gardens and really value and cherish it. So a lot of restrictive rules, I think, are turning gardeners a little bit against each other and not building that community spirit we definitely used to have. Especially we used to have potlucks and.
Maria, your time is up.
Okay.
Thank you. City Manager Raven, is there any other speakers?
No, Vice Chair, there's not.
Okay, then we will move on. And the first item on the agenda is a review of the draft City Council Park area naming policy. We welcome Jesse Bond, the City Manager, Cassidy Berlin, the Management Analyst, and Ryan Daly, Recreation Manager.
Good evening, Parks and Recreation Commission. And first of all, thank you for allowing us to rearrange this agenda tonight so that we could accommodate some staff schedules and knock this item out relatively early in the meeting. We are going to be talking about the draft City Council Park area naming policy. The Commission will recall that back in June, we brought this original discussion forward. We were focused on 2 areas, and that was naming criteria and disqualifying criteria, and that's 2.0 and 3.0 in the policy document. Within the packet, we included a clean and a red line version. I will say we did receive some comments from commissioners and made some slight adjustments between when the packet went out and what we'll be talking about today. And I'll share my screen here in a second so I can highlight like 3 small word changes that we made that we'd like the commission to review. Once we move through that aspect, we will ask the commission to discuss the policy and, if desired, move forward with endorsement. So with that, if I can share my screen. Let's see. Vice Chair, let me know when that shows up for you. Awesome, thank you. So one of the changes submitted is right here in the first sentence of the 2.0 naming criteria, and that was to remove the section here in the red and change that to should guide the City Council's consideration when evaluating potential naming proposals. And then another change was to remove the word including here in section C of 2.0 and insert the word or to make that sentence flow a little bit better. And then looking at section 3.0, A, we changed that sentence and added in or park areas and neighboring jurisdictions. Using the word including there just did not flow correctly. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen and would seek any input from the commissioners or be happy to address any questions, I guess, that should come up. I'm sorry, Vice Chair, I think you were on mute.
Okay, I'll say it again.
Thank you.
Are there any questions before we move, before I ask for a motion? And I see Commissioner Cohen has his hand up.
Yes, thank you. This is Don Cohen. Thank you, Ryan, and the rest of the staff for the work that you did to capture what we discussed previously and to capture some of the suggestions to make it flow a little better. I think it's a good policy to recommend to the city council. I don't have the proposed motion in front of me, but I think it said recommend. I don't think it said endorse because we've had some issues. Some of us have had some issues with that word before, but in any event, I appreciate the work that staff put into this.
Without seeing any other questions, is there a motion as Commissioner Cohen suggested recommending that the draft city council park area naming policy go to the city council for consideration? Commissioner Cohen. You're on mute.
I didn't write down, and I don't have it in front of me, but I would make that motion that you just described.
Yep, so moved. Is there a second?
I'll
Second.
second.
And it's been moved by and seconded twice. So we'll now have any other further discussion about the motion.
Raven, sorry to interject. Raven, would you mind reading the motion for us just so that we're all on the same page again? Thank you.
Absolutely. The motion is to recommend the draft city council park area naming policy to the city council for consideration.
Any discussion or comments? So seeing none, we'll go right to a vote. Raven, will you please do a roll call?
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Hay,
Aye.
Commissioner Cohen,
Aye.
Vice Chair Burstein,
Aye.
Commissioner McCarthy,
Aye.
Commissioner Markson,
Aye.
Commissioner Westberg, Chair Struck. Thank you, Vice Chair.
So the motion has passed. So we'll move on to the second item of regular business, and that is to review and consider approving the minutes from the July 6, 2023 meeting. Commissioners, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of the July 6, 2023 meeting? That was so long ago.
So moved.
Is there a second? Commissioner Cohen?
Don Cohen, I will second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes. Again, city staff, may we have a quick roll call?
Thank you, Vice Chair Burstein. Commissioner McCarthy,
Aye.
Commissioner Markson,
Aye.
Commissioner Cohen,
Aye.
Commissioner Hay,
Aye.
Vice Chair Burstein,
Aye.
Commissioner Westberg, Chair Struck. Thank you, Vice Chair.
And the motion passes. So cooking right along, the third item is the community garden pea patch program objectives. We welcome Ryan Daly again, Recreation Manager, Katie Herzog, Recreation Supervisor, and Dave Sutherland, Recreation Coordinator.
Good evening again, Parks and Recreation Commission. I will be introducing this topic really quickly as Dave Sutherland, our Recreation Coordinator, pulls up the PowerPoint. As most of you know, and thank you for taking the time, many of the commissioners had a chance to meet with staff up at the P Patch, do a walkthrough and really get their boots dirty, I guess, walking through and checking out that facility. We do have a very unique facility, maybe compared to other jurisdictions. Ours is operated and coordinated by city staff. Many others utilize volunteer groups or nonprofit organizations and things of that nature. And ours takes place in a park on a bit of a hill as well. And so those are sort of unique factors that we have. And I don't want to take away from Dave's presentation too much. But what's come up over the last year or two, is we've had staffing transitions. We've also seen transitions within the P Patch. And so we've seen new users come in, and at times people have differing ideas of what a program should be and maybe what those expectations are. And I think you heard some of that earlier through public comment and some of the emails you've received. And so really what staff is asking today is we want to have a conversation with the Parks and Recreation Commission, utilizing this forum atmosphere that we've created to receive input from the community, which we have, especially the participants, but also have a conversation that will help lead us probably a couple meetings down the road to discussing some guidelines for this program. And tonight, what our goal is to really talk about the purpose and also the objectives for the program. And we have some questions that we'll be aiming toward the commission that will help to guide that. But Dave, I see you pop right on time. Excellent job, Dave. So with that, I will introduce Dave Setterland, our recreation coordinator, who oversees and coordinates the P Patch program, as well as all of our permitting and athletic field rentals here at Mercer Island.
Thank you, Ryan, and good evening, and thank you, commissioners, for the opportunity to speak with you all. I'm Dave Setterland, the Recreation Coordinator overseeing the P Patch program. Tonight's staff is here to seek your input on guidelines, purpose, and objectives for this program. And I'm just going to hop into it here. All right. Tonight, we'll provide a brief overview of the program's history, current operation, and seek input on the purpose and objectives of the program. The Commission's input will guide revisions of the program and guidelines, which will be presented to the Commission for review and endorsement in future meetings. So the Mercer Island P Patch was established in 1977. It's located behind the community center and is approximately just a little bit over an acre of park space. It includes 50 plots varying in sizes, slope, and visual appearance. There's a consistent wait list of about 20 people. It's a very popular program. Most plots are surrounded by participants' constructed fencing to keep the wildlife out mostly. We've had a lot of deer and rabbits in the area of the plot or the garden. They're using various methods in their construction of fences. Well, our current process is pretty straightforward. We've established guidelines with the help of the community gardeners themselves. We assign their plots and give them the rules and regs as they enter the garden. We communicate with all the participants regularly, annually. Obviously we collect program fees, and park maintenance plays a vital role in performing maintenance tasks, including keeping the pathways clear, delivering wood chips, trash, debris removal, and all sorts of other tasks that pop up throughout the growing season. The PROS plan goals provide strategic direction for the Mercer Island Parks and Recreation System. Staff utilize these goals when developing guidelines for the division programs. Listed here are the applicable goals from the PROS plans that relates to the community garden. We're hoping that you can keep these goals in mind as we have our discussion this evening and look to learn more about the direction of the P Patch. The following questions here The following questions were included within your agenda packet to assist staff in shaping the rules of the program. Let's walk through these questions together. I'll take the PowerPoint down and pass it off to Katie, who will walk us through these questions. So just bear with me as I stop sharing and we can start a conversation here.
Vice Chair Burstein, if I could jump in, we're working on getting, Ashley Hay got booted from the meeting, and we're working behind the scenes to try to bring her back. So just wanted to highlight that.
Great, thank you.
Well, thank you, Dave. I'm Katie Herzog, Recreation Supervisor, and tonight we will pose some questions that will hopefully spark some good discussion that then we can take and revise some guidelines to bring back to you. So the first question, again, these were in your agenda packet, is should participation in the P-Patch be open to all, prioritized to Mercer Island residents, or prioritized to residents, or just exclusive to residents? So we would welcome any feedback to question number 1.
Chair recognizes Commissioner McCarthy.
Thank you. Jody McCarthy. I think, given the amount of people that are interested in doing it, and also thinking back to when we did all of our planning and made the pyramid of the different levels of programs that we offer, this one seems like it makes sense to make this an exclusive Mercer Island, or certainly prioritizing Mercer Island residents. Yeah, because if we have a wait list that's 20 people long, then there was someone who wrote in and said they've been waiting for 5 years. That definitely seems like it should be exclusive to Mercer Island. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? I see Commissioner Cohen.
Yes, Don Cohen. I would agree with Commissioner McCarthy, and prioritization might not work if there's a year where there are available plots that city residents don't want, and you let somebody from another jurisdiction come in. Then what happens? You throw them out if there's if the next year there is more interest of city residents. It seems like it's setting it up for a little bit of a, in addition to the practicalities of it, it's setting up for some unhappiness, even though there might be unhappiness in making it exclusive. I think it's maybe less unhappiness in the long run. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other comments? I have a couple of just quick questions. Dave said that it was consistently 20 people on the wait list. How consistent is that? Does it really vary greatly, or rarely does it drop below 20, 15 people?
I see Ryan's on as well, but I do believe that for multiple years, the wait list has been 15 to 20 people. Like Jody mentioned, someone was on the wait list for 5 years. Not a lot of plots become available each year. So if you are on the wait list, it seems like you're staying there for quite some time. And then of course, we're adding as people become interested.
And I guess the follow-up to that is, how many people, what's the makeup of that wait list? How many are Mercer Island residents versus off-island people?
I'll look to Dave
Okay.
to
Yeah, I was gonna
provide
say,
the
I'm not
background on that. I'll provide a little bit of we'll call it pre-pandemic background. I mean, we're talking 98% of the people utilizing this program are residents pre-pandemic, and as that wait list, as we were able to very slowly roll people off of the wait list, it would go down. But for the most part, they're Mercer Island residents. We don't do a lot of advertising for this program off island, for sure. It's really a sort of like, about it because you live on Mercer Island. I'll mention something we didn't mention earlier, and that was that one of the things that occurred this last year was we have all of these giant plots, and Dave recognized an opportunity to subdivide those plots into smaller ones that allowed for more participants to come in off of the wait list. And so it's really been an effort for staff to try to get those individuals into the program. But Dave, could you talk a little bit about the current, I guess, residency of the wait list?
Yeah, of course. You know, like we've spoken to this evening, a lot of the waitlist predates my employment here with the city, and so the majority of the people on the wait list, it's not identified if they are or not residents. So you know, and of course there isn't a rule not allowing residents at this time. So I think moving forward on the opinion of this commission, we would then have the opportunity to include that into the rules and then adjust with who's on the wait list now, just through conversation with them.
Other questions or comments on this question? Oh, there's Ashley coming on, back on.
And maybe a
Give it,
hand up,
Ashley.
it looks like.
I'll recognize Sarah first, and then Ashley, if you want to speak on the question about Mercer Island residents participating in the P-patch, I'll give you a chance. So Commissioner Markson.
Thank you, this is Commissioner Markson. I think that I guess it makes sense to me to prioritize Mercer Island residents, and based on at least the one document that describes the guidelines. You know, the question came up of, would you kick out residents that, or sorry, P-patch participants who are not residents if you have Mercer Island residents waiting for a patch? I would assume that you would just, once a person has a P-patch, you would follow the guidelines similarly for anyone who has a patch. But just by prioritizing residents, then you know you're hopefully mostly serving your own community, but you don't end up in that situation where you might have a patch that's not being tended or gets in disrepair. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hay, you fully operational, and did you have any questions?
Yes, I agreed that this should be for Mercer Island residents. That's in line with what other P-patch guidelines would be in other cities. I looked into that a bit. And I think that if somebody already has a P-patch and they end up moving, but maybe it's nearby and they want to keep tending to it, I think that naturally, if they're keeping up with the guidelines and keeping the garden up, it would make sense for them to keep that P-patch until they decide that it becomes too far for them to go or whatnot. So those are my thoughts.
Excellent, thank you. So Katie, why don't we move on to the next question?
Okay, so second we have, should participants be permitted to have multiple P-patch plots? We've had some background where people have had plots for a very long time. They've moved or moved on from the P-patch, and another gardener has inherited their plot to then have two. Maybe they're really into gardening and known that up in the P-patch area. So someone has gifted their plot to a current gardener. So do you feel like that is okay? Or should we really restrict it to one plot per gardener?
I would add one other caveat that we've seen is maybe a husband signs up for one and then a wife signs up for one. So maybe you have two P-patches within a family group or within a household. And so just throwing that wrinkle in there for the commission to chew on a little bit.
So any questions, comments? Commissioner Hay.
Yeah, it seems reasonable that if there's a waiting list, that we would only allow the addition of one plot per household. And if there isn't a waiting list, then people could apply for an additional plot.
Thank you. Commissioner McCarthy.
Thank you, Jody McCarthy. I agree with Commissioner Hay and also want to add that, or just clarify, people gifting their plot to somebody else. I feel like this isn't their property. This is just something that they are using that the city has allowed them to put their stuff on, so that gifting your plot shouldn't be something that's allowed, especially with such a long waiting list. If there was no waiting list, then yes, absolutely, you could consider that. With the waiting list, that's a nice thought, but not really, doesn't really make a lot of sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Markson.
I think the one thing that popped in my head with that extra husband-wife scenario was if you have non-related people living in the same household who want a pea patch, and how it can be difficult to decide where to draw a line, and maybe the one potential way to handle it would be to prioritize again, like the households, like not make it a restriction. You can't have two in the same household, but we're going to start with one per household, and if we have another, we'll give it to you. I don't know. I don't think we have a ton of multifamily housing, but or no multi-tenants in the same address housing, but I'm sure we do have some.
Any other comments? I'll just say that if we make an allowance in a time of less demand, those people are going to be grandfathered in. And it could very well be years and years and years before that plot cycles back, especially if it's a down year, there aren't very many people, but in the next 7 years, the wait list just grows. So I would be very cautious about making allowances, even if a plot is available. I see Ryan.
Vice Chair, you triggered a thought in my head that we hadn't necessarily talked about, and it's not one of your questions, so I'm catching you off guard here. One of the things we've talked about is how long people have been occupying their individual plots. We don't necessarily have a time limitation. Actually, we don't have a time limitation on how long someone can occupy. They basically get to keep it within perpetuity. And as you heard, at times they get gifted. And so it becomes a little bit, you become an owner essentially of that plot if you get it at one point. I'd be curious if the commission, and I don't want you to have to think about times or whatnot. It's really a question of, do we want to put a limitation or should we not on the amount of time you may retain a plot?
Commissioner Markson.
Yeah, I don't think that there should be a limit on the time, as long as it's being cared for. Similar to, I think Commissioner McCarthy described not allowing gifting. That does make sense to me, and I think that's in the draft guidelines, but I don't think a time limit, personally don't like that idea.
That's helpful.
Okay, Katie, let's go on to question number 3.
Great. So should temporary structures be permitted within plots? And if so, to what degree? So there's a wide range of structures, what that definition is: fences, sheds, cabinets, a trellis, raised beds, enclosed areas. Really thinking of anything that can be put into that plot, what should or should not be allowed.
And I don't think we want to get too far into the exactly what should be allowed, but really on a vision standpoint of what the pea patch should be or look like.
Commissioner McCarthy.
Thank you, Jody McCarthy. Going to the pea patch last week, it really struck me how many different variations there were on fences, and it seems that with the increase of deer and rabbits on the island, that it makes a lot of sense for there to be outside the complete pea patch fence to protect those gardeners' plots, and it would reduce significantly the randomness of the different materials used to make different types of fencing, and that would significantly reduce the amount of people that needed to separate their plots with a fence. I think that would go a long way towards making it look cohesive and also protect all their hard work that they're trying to protect right now with the different fencing. In terms of the raised beds and stuff like that, I really can see that being an advantage, having the raised beds, because it is so wet, and being on the slope that allows you, and also perhaps if you are mobility challenged and you can't quite get down to the ground, that also is another reason why you'd want to consider that. Yeah, and using natural materials seems like it makes sense, and less of the metal potential stabbing hazards that we came across there last week. Thanks.
Commissioner Cohen.
Yes, Don Cohen. I agree that raised beds should be permissible. Elderly people and not so elderly can find it easier to garden that way. The outside fence idea is a good one, as long as the access of non-pea patch people isn't unduly limited, because I know what I've enjoyed, whether I walk up from the community center or walk up that other trail from the Luther Burbank parking lot, North End, is kind of walking is, fairly close around the various pea patches, just looking at what's growing, maybe chatting with people up there. So I know that there was a suggestion made by somebody to have outside fencing with gate access. But I think the gate access ought to be fairly easy, probably more than a single one, not subject to locking, with just issuing keys to pea patch occupants and staff, so that it has that other community value as well as for the pea patchers. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cohen. Commissioner Hay.
Thanks. I agree with everything that Commissioner McCarthy and Cohen have shared, especially regarding the fence around the perimeter, which would alleviate the need for individual patches to try and build something of their own. So I really like that idea. And then, without getting too prescriptive or too far into the weeds here, I think when we get to our objectives later, one of the objectives would help us to address the issue of structures or trellises or garden beds going forward. And that one is the objective of aligning participation with maintaining the natural character of the park and minimize unnatural physical and visual impacts to the surrounding park and neighborhood areas. So that might help us provide guidance through the years as we face more of these questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Markson.
Thank you. This is Commissioner Markson. I think it seems that the question of structures gets really complicated in my mind, because, of course, you grow beans, you need a huge tall pole to let them climb up. Tomatoes need cages. There's lots of things that people grow that require structures to support them, and that I'm sure that we would allow. And in addition, I know a lot of people, like to put garden art in their gardens, and I know I've seen that at pea patches, and it seems like that you either have to do all or nothing, because it will be very hard to pick and choose what's allowable and what's art and what's, I don't know, I can't totally imagine. And the only things I could really feel defensible to me are, is it safe? Is it causing harm to someone else's garden? like shading, for example. That's probably the most likely way that it would cause harm. And I can't actually think of another like limitation unless you were like literally to say no structures. So anyway, that's my thought. Though I would, maybe the one other thing I could say is no enclosures. I don't really know what that means. Maybe there's something to hold your garden tools that does make sense, but something you sit in doesn't make sense in a garden. Like a little, I don't know, like a bus shed or something.
Thank you. I will just add that the fencing around specifically to keep out wildlife is a great idea. And just curious to the city, thinking about if there was no interior fencing, would it be an issue for various gardeners, or is it an issue now for people going in and borrowing materials from another gardener without permission? Are there any complaints of somebody took my spade and left it in their lot and I had to search for it for a half an hour before I found it?
I can answer that. For the most part, there doesn't seem to be too many gardener conflicts regarding tools. I think most of the conflicts stem from off-leash dogs, from people wandering into the pea patch that don't necessarily have a pea patch but pick produce. Those are more the conflicts that I see than the actual, of course, the gardeners have issues with each other, but they're typically not of that nature.
Commissioner Cohen.
Yes, Don Cohen. This question about the exterior fencing, I'm not sure I'm in favor of prohibiting interior fencing, even if there's exterior fencing, because I have never had a pea patch, but if I did, and I spent a lot of time working on it, and I wanted to be proud of the whole facility, but also proud, this is the pea patch that I work. So I don't know if it requires fencing to be able to express that satisfaction and pride or not, but some way I don't favor total homogeneity as opposed to individuality, as long as it doesn't impact negatively what we're trying to accomplish or anybody else's efforts.
Great point. Commissioner McCarthy.
Thank you. It just occurred to me that if we did do the outside fence, then there would be a spot that we could put at all of the openings that explained the rules, so that any non-pea patchers who didn't know would have like a notice to say, hey, don't pick this. This is actually somebody else's food, because maybe they just thought it was there for all comers. Just a thought.
Thank you. Rec Manager Daly.
I was just gonna comment that we haven't been contemplating a fence around the outside of this park property. We will have a potential Luther Burbank master plan that this sort of capital project or investment may be something that the commission would weigh in on at that point. I think it's an interesting conversation. I think the changes to the area that can occur when you put fencing up in a park space can change the way it feels. And I think Commissioner Cohen was kind of speaking to that of being able to access your areas in that pea patch. And it's been really interesting seeing people who don't own pea patches going up there, and really, like, the dahlias up there right now are just in full bloom. It's super cool. And how many people go in and enjoy that. So I'm just kind of saying this because it's something I hadn't thought of, was how the other park patrons are utilizing this space and enjoying this space based off of the efforts our participants are putting in. So I just wanted to kind of call out the fencing. There's that hasn't been identified as a capital project or need, but I'm glad the commission is discussing.
Excellent. Anything else on this? Commissioner Markson?
Yeah, thank you. I would just say that I would assume if there's not, a capital project to build a fence around it, that it seems unreasonable to expect that people wouldn't put up their own fences, because it's almost impossible to grow anything that the deer won't get at.
Yeah.
Or, dogs, like people have mentioned, I'm sure that could cause a lot of frustration if you're growing vegetables and there's dogs wandering around. Of course, there's probably cats and rabbits and other things wandering around as well, but dogs are big.
Thank you.
Okay, the next question we kind of touched a little bit upon with those answers, but should plots be permitted to display signage, decorations, or items not associated with gardening? Someone said garden gnomes, for example. So the look and feel, again, should those non-gardening items be permitted?
Comments and questions?
I'll provide a little bit of park-wide context. From a park standpoint, we don't allow anyone to place signage within the parks without being permitted by the department director. So you couldn't, if you were going to leave signage in a park, that's not something that's currently permitted. It also, we don't have a policy around you can do this but not that right now, so that this is where part of that this conversation arose. Was we did have an individual up at the P patch place a number of signs on their patch area, as well as writing and sayings and quotes and things of that nature, that may or may not, everybody kind of can take that experience in a different way. And so that's something that's sort of an unforeseen challenge that has arisen for us at this point.
Commissioner McCarthy.
Thank you. I would say if that is for the whole park, that perhaps that should be something that is made a rule for everything. And maybe we don't allow word signs and things like that in the P patch, just to keep it consistent with the whole parks for Mercer Island. Thanks.
Commissioner Markson.
I had a question before I maybe make a statement. Do other P patches allow signs? I assume other P patches are also part of their parks. Maybe that's the first question. Do we know, are most P patches parts of parks departments or city property?
Yeah, and Dave, please jump in if you'd like. It does feel like some P patches are run by nonprofit organizations versus cities. So there was kind of a wide variety of guidelines and corresponding with who actually runs them. I don't know if that's the most accurate answer. Dave, if you have more, or Ryan.
Yeah, Katie, I don't have too much to add to that. I think from what we've seen in our research, community gardens come in a lot of different sizes and shapes and are run by a lot of different, for-profit, nonprofit, government entities, and they're all a little bit different, but they're all a little similar too. And so some of the similarities that we've seen, I haven't seen anything that explicitly talks about signage.
Okay, thank you. I guess I could see my gut reaction was just well, the signage, I guess in my mind it should follow whatever the city protocol is. I mean, it's city property or parks department property, and it's the most straightforward way to provide guidance is to see it as that, like to follow the same rules that the rest of the park follows.
Thank you. Commissioner Cohen?
Don Cohen. I'm trying to think of whether there's a difference between the Pea Patch and other Mercer Island park areas. Maybe one of the staff members, is there anywhere else that someone will have a designated thing that person has worked on for a year or multiple years, as opposed, there's something that's gnawing at me about saying is, adopt the same rule for the Pea Patches as for the whole park system, where I'm trying to think of, is this really different in a fundamental way? And if it is, how do you limit the nature of the signage, or can it be Paul Burstein's Pea Patch? Can it be a religious saying that is not socially or culturally objectionable, but is something that even ties in? I don't know. So I'm sort of mixed on this one, but I'm not sure. It's, in my mind at the moment, it's not clear to me that just because the rest of the park doesn't permit those things, that should necessarily apply here.
I'll take a stab at that one a little bit. No, we really don't have another program that's relatable to this, or a use of park space, I guess, that would be similar to the Pea Patch. I'm gonna hang my hat here that I'm gonna need to talk with our city attorney about this as well, because you do have some free speech elements that come into play here. I do know that from a rules standpoint, we would be able to specify, based on the character of the program, if signage or artistic expressions and things like that would be permitted within the program. That's something that we would be able to stick with, but I would need to work with the city attorney to discuss what those limitations specifically are. So you bring up an excellent question and relation to other programs, Commissioner Cohen.
And I'll just add, I think it's a real challenge to objectively structure this so it can be operationally enforced. So what is excessive? What is inspirational? How much? So you might have somebody that puts a beautiful little heart that says love on their Pea Patch, and the next one over is just plastered with very bright neon signs. Might also be inspirational, but it might question how much are they cultivating the land versus how much are they putting up signage. And I don't know how you would effectively put that in a policy so that you can manage that within the Pea Patch. That would be a big challenge that stands out in my mind. And with that, Katie, what's next?
Okay, any thoughts on if only organic gardening products should be allowed in the Pea Patch area?
Comments? Don Cohen.
Yes, Don Cohen. I would take the position, or favor the position, that only organic products are permissible. It's one of the fundamentals of it, as I understand it.
Thank you. Commissioner Markson.
I guess I can just say I agree with Commissioner Cohen.
Commissioner Hay.
I agree. I also think this is slightly hard to regulate because we don't have people watching all the time what people are putting on their gardens. And so I do think that should be the suggestion. I know that sometimes people like to change the acidity of the soil, and they might use a product, I don't know, which might fall out of those guidelines. That's a possibility, but I think in general, to make that a suggestion is a good one, but it could be hard to really monitor that.
Yeah, and I would ask, where does that guideline begin and where does it end? So if I bring plastic buckets and leave them on my pea patch. Definitely not organic, definitely useful, and something that is used regularly. Bags and mulch. So the plastic around the mulch is obviously not organic, but the purpose is to bring in the mulch or the topsoil, whatever it is. And they don't use it all. I wouldn't necessarily want somebody hauling a partial bag up and down the access road back to the parking lot just because it happens to be contained in a non-organic form. Okay, and I don't have the list in front of me. Katie, is there more?
There's just one more. It looks like maybe one more hand first.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Cohen.
Yes, Don Cohen. I wasn't thinking about the, plastic bucket sort of example. I was thinking about application materials to it. Also, however, I would be surprised if there aren't some products where you can buy a bag of mulch or something that at least says on the label that it's not good, that the bag is not does not contain microplastics and things like that. So, but I would leave those kinds of things for the staff to drill down on. And when we get to the objectives or the guidelines, I think, as Commissioner Hay said earlier, it might help give some further direction on this. Thank you.
Commissioner Markson, you had your hand up, took it down. Good. Okay.
Okay, and the last one, should plots be required to maintain a standard of care? So weed-free, use of standard materials, fences in upright positions, things along those lines.
Comments, questions? Commissioner Cohen.
Don Cohen, yes.
Very succinct. Thank you. Commissioner Hay?
Yeah, on this one, I feel a little bit more flexible because, there's a saying that the only difference between a weed and a flower is judgment. And I think of my 7-year-old son, whose favorite flower is actually a dandelion. And depending on people's abilities to get out and maintain their gardens over time, with the exception of some kind of invasive species, which might harm the other plots, I wouldn't be too worried about this one. I think that having once or twice a year cleanups of the plots, if necessary, would be a great idea. That would be a nice community building activity where people could work together and identify anything that might need to be cleaned up. But I think in keeping with people's really personalization of their plots, I'm not too worried about this aspect.
Thank you. Seeing no, Commissioner Cohen.
Yeah, Don Cohen. Well, I don't think that I recall seeing anything in the material so far that, gave very specifics on standard of care kinds of things that I would disagree with. It wasn't like you can't grow any dandelions, you can't do this and that and so forth. So I'm not trying to be facetious or anything, but I don't think I disagree with Commissioner Hay, but I also do feel that some basic standard of care, however the staff winds up defining it, is probably going to be something that I would favor, because it isn't going to be overly prescriptive, but it's at least going to have the code of conduct that people would expect. So more to follow, I suppose.
Thank you. Commissioner Markson.
Thank you, Commissioner Markson. I think similar to what Ashley said, just the idea that weeds that could invade other properties or not, on a noxious weed list, because there's certainly lists of weeds that are considered invasive, based on the Department of Natural Resources probably provides a list or something like that. Those would be the ones that you would focus on, and not just what someone might call a weed and someone else might call a flower. I think that it says like standard materials, which would imply like, here are the list of things that you can use on your property. And while I like that because it simplifies everybody who's managing it, it's like you can only use these things and people won't like it, but, or, you know, some people may not like it. It makes it easy to enforce. But it also totally takes away the freedom, maybe some of the joy that people have with their pea patches. And it'd be nice. And I imagine that's where the conflict comes in, right? Is that someone has joy with one thing and other makes other, you know, the person next door unhappy. And, you know, in an ideal world, maybe they figure out a way to live together happily. But I suppose if that is what the conflict is, that, you know, it's really resulting in the most conflict, or I don't really have a feel for how much conflict there is, but if that is the primary source of conflict, then I think the best choice is to provide standardized material. Anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Reynolds, you had your hand up. Did you have anything?
I got it. Question was answered.
Okay, great. So Katie, are we moving on to the objectives?
Yes, Steve will put the presentation back up and take it from there.
Hey, thank you, Katie, so much. Is the slideshow visible? All right.
Yes, it is.
All right, so here we are at the purpose statement. Does this proposed purpose statement feel appropriate based on the conversation that we just had? You know, the purpose statement typically addresses the why aspect of the program. I'll read through this, and I'm just hoping to get, you know, did we miss anything? Is there something that should be included in here? And obviously, we're going to take input that you've given us this evening and put it in here. You know, I heard things about preferred, you know, residency, plots per household, no limits on years, you know, different things like that. All that stuff will be included, but I just want to get a feel if we're moving in a direction that this group thinks is appropriate. So I'll read here and then we can discuss for a moment. The Mercer Island Pea Patch is a community garden program coordinated by the city of Mercer Island and cultivated by local gardeners who take pleasure in nurturing their own harvest through environmentally sustainable practices. The Pea Patch program enables food and ornamental planting in individual plots, which provides opportunities for connection within the community, provides increased food security, and supports improved mental health for visitors and participants alike. Just hoping to get some feedback on the purpose statement.
You want to stop sharing, Dave, if possible? Just to kind of reiterate from staff standpoint, one of the challenges we encountered this year was potentially individuals who have entered the program and wanted it to be something maybe different than it had been in the past. And what we're seeking to do tonight is really to identify what is the purpose of this program. Is it artistic? Is it, could I, if I got a pea patch plot, Ryan, could I don't know, groom it out and make it a little infield baseball field for my son? Or, you know, I think we're really trying to just identify what the purpose of the program is and what that participation looks like.
Commissioner Hay.
Thanks. I really love this statement. I think it embodies what we have discussed tonight. I would suggest adding physical to the last sentence. So physical and mental health, because gardening is actually really hard work. So anybody who enjoys gardening knows they probably have some scars to prove it. So I think this is a resource which helps people improve their physical and mental health.
Thank you. Any other comments? Commissioner McCarthy.
Thank you. I concur with Commissioner Hay. I think it's a lovely statement for an awesome program, and also adding the physical aspect of it, because you're absolutely right about it not being non-physical. Thanks.
Other comments? Seeing none. Katie?
All right, I think Dave will now put up the objectives slide, and we're almost wrapped up.
And I can see the screen.
All right. On this slide, you'll see the proposed program objectives. From our conversation, do these objectives appear to align with the direction of the committee? Objectives tend to address the what aspect of the program. So I think here we're just hoping to get your input and find out if these objectives align with the direction of the committee. And I'll take down the presentation so we can have a conversation.
Is there any discussion? Commissioner Cohen.
Don Cohen. The one, and this is one that Commissioner Hay quoted earlier about park area. Oh, I'm sorry. Natural character, et cetera, et cetera. I wondered why that wasn't carried over into the guidelines in some way, because it seems like something specific that isn't just an objective, but it ought to be in some way incorporated in the guidelines also. So that's one suggestion. The other thing was that the one P patch that had the color scheme that was one of the issues that came up during the past year with fairly bright colors and things like that. Where would that fall in this objective, or if that were in the guidelines? If anybody on staff, I'm sure you've thought about it, where that would fall. Is that the natural character, et cetera, or does, and I realize it's all, you may have Ryan Daly's point about free speech and you can't control certain things, et cetera, et cetera.
I'll take a quick stab at that one. So the plot that's in there, or the one you were mentioning, there's quite a few things that it's not aligning with. Can't have paint. The height was too high. It was exceeding across its boundaries. There was sort of a large list there. Within these objectives, and that's probably, we're looking at that through the objectives being the natural character of the park. The guidelines would be much more specific as they are currently in saying no paint. We do have, Vice Chair Burstein and I were talking about what about stain and wood preservation and things like that. And those are things that we're hoping to glean out of this conversation, if those should be permissible elements. I think along with the discussion here is, should we allow people to paint things bright or unnatural colors in the P patch? Because as you could see, it did differ greatly. And I'm curious what the commission's feel is on that, because that would probably change our statement around the natural character of the area.
This Don Cohen, can you point me, Ryan, to in the guidelines where it says no paint?
Dave's probably faster.
Or somebody, I'm not questioning your.
No,
Yeah,
you should.
I think under maybe it's section 4 says structures, in that it talks about maybe towards the bottom of that section, it talks about trellises, treated lumber, and also paint. I'm sorry, I don't have the guidelines in front of me.
Yes, it's the last bullet point in section 5, structures, tires, railroad ties, ground covering, and treated/painted lumber are not allowed.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll just speak to the paint issue. It's one of the challenges we ran into is when individuals are painting their structures. I don't know if you've painted your house, but I can tell you when I do, there's a little spillage. Sometimes there's some overspray. Those were issues that were encountered by some of the P-Patch participants this year, and has us kind of pointing back to this and thinking about it from both an environmental standpoint, but also a visual and park user standpoint who are utilizing that park space and may or may not be part of the participation of the program.
Any
So
other comments?
this Don Cohen, so under that model, if it were accepted, you could paint off-site, paint your lumber off-site, bring it on, and you wouldn't have you'd still have the aesthetic issue, but you wouldn't have the spillage issue. So just, well.
Yep, exactly.
Commissioner McCarthy.
Thank you. I was just thinking, in terms of the paint and painted structures, it sort of goes against the whole organic and trying to make it to be as natural as possible in the park. It's already part of the guidelines. It doesn't seem like we need to add more to it because it already is part of the guidelines to have no painted wood. Yeah, I don't know what else to say to it, except that it's already in the guidelines. That seems pretty specific to have and the whole thing is to make it as organic and natural as possible. Thanks.
Commissioner Markson.
I think I'm trying to separate in my mind things that are just what they look like versus the organic, things that would affect the soil and the plants in the surrounding area. And I think that, like treated lumber, that it can, and probably painted lumber, I don't actually know the research, but can leach into the surrounding soils. That makes sense, right? That you would not want that in your pea patch. But then I'm like picturing, let's say someone puts up a fence and they put a colorful painted border around the top where it's not like hitting the soil. It's just the look of it, that the color, that maybe someone doesn't like. And so, but then let's say they put a bright glass flower that's the same color as that painted top thing on their fence. I don't know, it's difficult to say, well, I don't like that orange painted wood that's on top of your fence, but my orange flower, like glass flower, is okay. So I can 100% get on board of the keeping the gardens as organic as possible so that, when the gardens turn over, they're not, inheriting soil that's contaminated with other things, something that someone left. Like that seems to me like a critical decision point. And it does seem, I actually have a hard time deciding myself. Like I like the idea that it could have some artistic expression in a garden, which is a lot, you put flowers in there, it's already an artistic expression. But I don't know if I'm having a hard time deciding on a hard and fast rule. It's like you either allow it or you don't at all. It seems like that's it. If you have to have a rule, then you either have to allow all art as long as it's not affecting the purpose of growing food and growing flowers, like the objectives that are here, or you just say we can't allow it at all. I don't know. Maybe I'm being too black and white, but those are my thoughts.
Any other comments or questions for city staff? Discussion. Okay, seeing none, does that wrap us up?
Yes, that wraps us up. We have one more slide, which is essentially saying that we'll come back at a later time, later meeting, with the revised guidelines, objectives, and purpose statement for everyone to weigh in on. We'll take the feedback we received this evening and update and look for your endorsement later on.
Commissioner Markson?
Sorry, I just had one question, actually. I was curious what was meant by, I mean, I know what it means to enhance biodiversity, but I was curious to find it in the P-patch purpose. I was curious what the thinking was behind that.
Yeah, that's great. As we were combing through the pros plan, one thing that we noticed that kept popping up regarding parks in general were diverse spaces that pollinators could thrive and things of that nature. So the pea patch serves as a place that is creating, like Ryan said, the dahlias, all the different flowers up there are a natural pollinating area that is really probably crucial to the island. So I think that's what we're trying to get to with that one, is that it is a purposeful place when people are planting these flowers.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank the city staff for that great stimulating conversation and look forward to a future date where we go in deeper into the dirt. So the fourth item on the agenda is the department report and update. And I welcome back Recreation Manager Ryan Daly.
Gosh, it feels like I'm not getting off your screen tonight, but thank you.
And
Thank you
couldn't say
for
welcome back, but here you are.
well, thank you for taking the lead on the puns related to the pea patch. That's helpful, and for the commission staying right at the perfect weed height. That was ideal. Please let me know once this shows up on your screen. And I have some fun stuff to share.
I can see it.
Awesome. All right. If it advances, there we go. Well, the first thing is not fun stuff. It's an update on the city hall closure. Staff is preparing an update for the city council at the October 3rd meeting. So more information will come forward at that meeting about the direction will be given to go with City Hall and addressing the needs we have with that closure. Currently, we're maintaining the hybrid meetings. We are working here at the community center on the Slater room. That's our exterior room here of creating accommodations that will be able to be utilized in serving the city council meetings as well as board and commission. So what I'm saying there is there's a chance we're going to see each other in person in the not too distant future. And we're really looking forward to that from the staff standpoint. We are working on temporary office spaces. As I mentioned before, police is currently occupying the Luther Burbank building. And we do have a number of other city staff that are popping into that location. It's not ideal for police to be operating out of there, mainly on their part. They just have differing facility needs that just can't be accommodated down at the Luther Burbank building. But we are working on that as well as with the court to find suitable locations for them. We are doing some exhaustive long-term planning work so that we can replace City Hall or revitalize it so that we can move forward with having a location that can host all of our city functions. A little update, Luther Burbank South Shoreline Improvement Project. I don't know if you have had a chance to walk down there. It's really coming along. This project began back in April, and there's been significant progress made over the last couple of months. Big part of that is the great weather we've had for putting in the trail and managing that. We expect that trail to reopen here at the end of summer, and we will have some replantings happening in that area through the fall and winter as we move through the seasons. Additional info is located at that link below. All right, another project happening down at the Luther Burbank Dock area. As you'll recall, the city hired a local artist creating public art for the Luther Burbank Plaza area. This summer consisted of a lot of public engagement at summer celebration, mostly music in the park, as well as the Mercer Island Farmers Market. And we did have a Let's Talk page running as well. We have stopped gathering that input at this point, and the artist is moving forward with developing some designs. And that work is going to be reviewed by the Arts Council at the October meeting. I believe that meeting is going to be on the 25th or the 26th of October. And they will be making a recommendation for funding and approval to the City Council at that meeting. And for more information, the same link works for both the Shoreline Project and the Dock Project. Bike skills area update. We're waiting on one final piece of permitting. Once we receive that, we'll update the Let's Talk page with the updated construction schedule. If you've popped out there, you would have noticed quite a bit of early site preparation, which has been done by our park maintenance crew. And if you haven't had a chance, pop out there as well. Great to see that project progressing forward. And we will continue to be doing the Island Crest Park trail counts. If you recall, we've had staff out there occasionally documenting the number of patrons utilizing those trails at Island Crest Park. And if anyone is interested in using a little clicker and clicking people and how many, and documenting how many people are utilizing that trail, we always have opportunities available. And Sarah Bluvis's contact info is at the bottom. All right, Luther Burbank pickleball courts. We did have an unexpected permitting hurdle come up over the last month, and it relates, if you can see the hill in the background there up against the wall, the amount of material that has to be moved is triggering some additional potential permitting needs. So our staff is working, the project staff is working with the Community Planning and Development Department to identify the best path forward with that. We still anticipate the project being completed this spring, but we're refining the steps of how that project will maintain progress. So more info will be updated on the link below, and I'll be sure to get that to you as we move forward over the next probably week or so. Playground replacements. This is another question that's kind of been popping up. We've contracted with Burger Partnership to lead a variety of park planning needs, including the design for playground replacements at Deans and Roanoke Park. Staff is currently working with the Burger team to identify what that engagement timeline looks like. Our goal was to kick that off here in late September. It looks like it's getting pushed back a little bit. There's a couple, well, as you know, City Hall is closed, and that's pulled a few resources. And so we've been shuffling some things. So I anticipate that we're going to be beginning that engagement late fall to into the winter. And once that information comes out, I'll be sure to share it with the commission. And as a reminder, these playground replacement projects were funded through the Parks Levy. So we'll be talking a little bit more about this as we get to December, as we share with the commission the progress of those levy funds and what that timeline looks like on project development. And stay tuned for more details. Oh, what a weekend. Seafair. Gosh, I forgot how much time has passed since we met. As the commission remembers, we did have some overcrowding issues, some significant traffic impacts in the Groveland neighborhood. And this year, for the first time I'm aware of, we put a capacity on the park. What we did was we placed a fence across the top of Groveland Park, and as every patron came in, they were clicked in, so we can monitor how many people were in there. I had the lucky pleasure of being one of those individuals. As this group knows, I love to talk, and so I had the chance to talk to a ton of people that came to the park. We did fill every day, probably a couple hours before the air shows actually began. And as you can see in that picture on the right, people hung out in the parking lot and were able to see the show. I will tell this group, the majority of those I interacted with, and I literally probably was in contact with 80% of the people who entered the park that day, the significant majority were non-island residents. And I think that's partially due to they know that the challenge of that park. And the other part is the secret is out on how great that location is. I do anticipate that next year we'll be doing the same thing. The neighbors were extremely happy with how this went. And that's really the important thing, that their everyday lives were not impacted. We were able to maintain safe traffic flow through the area. And we got to talk to a ton of people. It was a lot of fun. It really went well. And I wanted to make sure I shared that with the commission. Just a couple of updates for the Parks and Natural Resources teams. We have a new Parks team member, Andrew Cook. You'll see him down at Luther Burbank oftentimes. He was actually a seasonal with us and progressed into a full-time staff member. So great to have him moving forward with us. And then our Trails and Natural Resources crews have been very busy. They've been doing a ton of tread repairs on stairways, as well as brushing the trails and completing some knotweed treatments throughout island areas. We've also had contractors and volunteers completing the first and second year comprehensive weed removal over 17.5 acres at Pioneer Park and Engstrom Open Space. And then our park maintenance crews jumped on literally that bike skills area site prep. That was something they weren't necessarily anticipating before. And they took that work on in addition to all of the things they provide us throughout the summer in keeping the parks functioning. They've also, as of recently, been focused on our fall sports. We still have a significant amount of natural turf areas, so grass areas that they manage and upkeep as we go through the fall sports time period. And then we have had a lot of special events this summer. And that group is our #1 support for going out, managing trash, keeping the bathrooms up and running, as well as assisting with a lot of the setup for both our city coordinated events and private events that happen in our park system. Volunteers, as of the 31st, August 31st, the city has hosted 54 volunteer events with a total of 629 volunteers and over 1,400 hours of work done. That's amazing. I mean, I was pretty shocked when I saw that. Awesome work, and a huge thank you to all of our volunteers out there. The forest stewards tabled at the farmers market this past weekend, and we have 12 active forest stewards who have contributed over 335 hours of volunteer work. We also had volunteers working at 12 different locations that I won't go through and name. And we also have an Arbor Day planting event at Luther Burbank Shoreline coming up on October 21st, and that's led by the Mountains to Sound Greenway. And so for more opportunities to volunteer is at that link below. Oh, the fun stuff keeps on rolling, mostly music in the park. What an awesome year. We kicked off on July 13th, right before summer celebration, and it seemed like every week got better and better and better. Just tremendous turnouts. You can see people in the picture down below dancing, all ages. This is a great event for our senior population that comes and takes part at Mercer Dale. And just a huge thank you to For Culture, the Mercer Island Community Fund, Classic Pianos, and Island Treats, as well as MyBall, who all supported this event. Without their help, it really wouldn't have turned out nearly as well as it did. Additionally, we had Shakespeare in the Park this summer, 12 shows down at Luther Burbank Amphitheater, went throughout July and August. We saw pretty significant crowds down there. We see a lot of people filling that parking lot and then parking at the community center and walking down. Wooden O is a tremendous supporter or partner, I should say, as we've had this relationship with them. It seems like it grows every year, and they provide these shows at us at a very discounted rate, and it's an excellent opportunity for our community to be able to come out and enjoy those performances. Oh yeah, we had summer celebration too. Awesome weather, awesome event. That took place on July 15th. We kicked off with the return of the community parade. Great crowd for that. That was brought to us by Island Books, John L. Scott, and Island Treats. They stepped up and actually coordinated the parade this year. Took a tremendous amount of workload off of your city staff. And so by having those communities members step up, it really led to, I think, a really positive outcome with that parade in bringing people back and really kicking off the event the right way. It was this instant crowd that entered the park at Mercerdale as soon as the parade was done, creating just an outstanding energy throughout. And we had plenty of food this year. If you remember last year, we had a couple food trucks bag out on us. This year, we went above and beyond and added a number of them. Their sales, from what I heard, were outstanding. So very well appreciated by all who attended, as well as all of the city staff that were on hand through various city booths and participating in the parade as well. And then we went into the evening, and Luther Burbank saw a huge crowd. Just awesome weather, great fireworks show. The band received tons of accolades just on how well all of that went. And this is an event that takes literally all of our staff departments to put on. All of them step up and support this, as well as a lot of our community supporters, like the Mercer Island School District, who provides the shuttle service from various locations on the island to Luther Burbank Park. And we also provided paid parking at the community center, which garnered $6,000 in revenue that goes directly to the event. And just another huge shout out to our summer celebration sponsors. I believe we raised somewhere in the neighborhood of $50,000 this year to support this event. And so without the help of all of these listed, it would not have been possible. Oh yeah, summer camps. We had summer camps as well. Community Center was extremely busy this summer with those camps, as well as the private rentals that were offered. We had 15 different types of camps this year. We continue to expand annually, and we had over 1,600 participants enrolled. Primarily Mercer Island children taking part, and we had Lego and basketball and sailing and kayaking, or not sailing, but we had kayaking and paddleboarding, as well as a couple of theater camps through Theater Northwest, Youth Theater Northwest, and the Seattle Shakespeare Company. And one of the questions that seemingly comes up often is, what are we doing for our senior population? What kind of programs are being offered? And we had the opportunity to host a lunch with Bell Harbor. Again, as I keep talking about leveraging these partnerships, we had over 60 seniors attend this lunch that we were calling the British Invasion. It was an excellent event, ton of fun to reconnect with those groups, and it highlights our need to continue to invite that population into the community center, which is truly a priority for us as we move through this year and into next. But we do have other ongoing programs that are really specific to the senior population, and that's Osher Lifelong Learning. We have a senior golf program that we partner with. We offer community coffee 2 days a week. Most of our drop-in activities have a strong contingent of senior participants. And then we have our gallery and receptions that take place, as well as Tai Chi, Kendo, Jazzercise, and Naginata. So there are a number of programs being offered to that senior population. I think where we need to take a next step is our community outreach and making sure that they're well informed. I would say that these programs are very well attended as is. We are doing very well in participation numbers at this time. And what's upcoming? Go Hawks. It's that time of year, big week. So tomorrow, we are having our first Blue Friday during community coffee hour, anticipating quite a few of our senior population showing up again for this one. We'll be doing some NFL bingo, having prizes, refreshments, and snacks all the way around. And then we are doing a number of watch parties as well with the Seahawks on Sundays and one Monday late in October. So those are what's on the horizon, and we're excited to bring people in to watch those games. Another event coming up on Friday as well is Art Uncorked. And the information there is at their website, mercerislandartuncorked.com. And we, as the city, it's not something that we host, but we do support them through a partnership of providing space in the park to offer this event. So with that, I thank you, and I will stop sharing.
But don't go anywhere, because the sixth item of business, or the fifth item rather, is the 2023 planning schedule update given to us by none other than Ryan Daly.
Before I jump on that, I do see Commissioner Cohen's hand up.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you,
Sorry.
Don Cohen. I had one question going back to the report. You mentioned, Ryan, that on the bike skills area that there was one permitting issue still outstanding. Can somebody briefly state what that permitting issue is?
I don't have that offhand, but I can follow up with you tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if that works. I don't have the specific on it.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's move to the 2023 planning schedule update. Ryan?
Okay, it was included in your packet. The only item I would really like to highlight would be we're going to be discussing in November, probably November timeframe, talking about updating the park code. In looking at, we're talking about the guidelines for the P-patch, but diving deeper into how our park spaces are utilized is something we're going to be really focused on going forward through this year. And so I'll be coming forward. We'll have an initial conversation. This is something that's probably going to take 3 or 4 meetings to move forward with a recommendation to City Council. But our park code has not been evaluated or updated since about the mid-90s. And there are things such as e-bikes, drones, all kinds of things that we're just doing things differently now. So this is our opportunity to dive in and take a look at that. So that's something staff's currently working on. My anticipation is an initial touch in November. Additionally, going forward, so to the next meeting, you'll be getting an update on your bylaws. This is something the city clerk has been working on across various boards. So we're creating sort of a standard set of bylaws that the commission will be reviewing. And then we'll also be providing an initial look and conversation around a sponsorship policy. As you'll recall, we started to dive into that conversation a little bit with our donation and gift policy. And so we want to start to do these in tandem, and then we'll be returning at a later date to update on the gift policy as well as with that sponsorship and donation policy. So that is where we stand with the planning schedule.
Excellent. Thank you. So the sixth item of business is commissioner reports and work plan updates. Commissioners, do you have anything to report? Let us know what you saw over the summer. Commissioner Hay.
Thanks. No update. I just want to say a huge thank you to the Parks and Rec team for an awesome summer. You were so busy, and many of these events were greatly enjoyed by our family and thousands of others. So thanks for the hard work. And we had a great time this summer. Good job.
Any others? I'll just add that summer wasn't long enough to go and participate with everything the city put on. It was spectacular. I agree with Commissioner Hay. Okay, so our next meeting, regular Parks Recreation Commission meeting, is October 5th at 5 p.m. The time is now 6:39, and we will be adjourned. However, as a reminder to the commissioners, please stay seated until the city staff has terminated the Zoom broadcast. Good evening, and let's hope for some good summer weather for the last couple of weeks.